A fact about my transplant is I got my transplant from a deceased kidney donor. Now, I noticed that there's a lot of people on the transplant list that are looking for transplants that want a living donor, and they won't compromise. But I came to sort of a realization that I didn't want to be a dialysis patient for the rest of my life, or until I died, or whatever was going to happen in the future. So in order for me to get the transplant, there were certain compromises that I had to make in order to ensure that I got the kidney. Now, ideally, a living kidney is what you want. Living kidneys last longer, they function better, they transfer the kidney from a living person straight into you right there on the table. But for me, they put my kidney on ice. They were keeping it alive with oxygen, and they had just got it in. So was practically brand new. So they just got it in. They called me. I got there. Then they put the kidney from being on ice into my body. So like the transition happened very quickly with me. But sometimes you don't always have the luxury of getting what you want unless you're comfortable with being on dialysis. I hated dialysis. There wasn't a single thing that I liked about it. I did not view it as a blessing. I had a horrible experience with dialysis. And some people, it might be different. Some people might love it. There's some people that I've heard of that don't want to get a transplant. They want to be on dialysis for the rest of their life for whatever their reasoning is. I can't wrap my mind around that. I don't understand that. But I knew that with whatever chance that I could take that was available to me to get a transplant as fast as possible, I would take it. I put myself on the dual kidney transplant, where they take two not marginally functioning kidneys. They take two 50%. Let me just use percentages here. They take two like 50% working kidneys. They put them in your body, and that is supposed to, be comparable to one. I put myself on the Hep C kidney transplant list. So they take kidneys that have been that either have Hep C or have had exposure to Hep C to give to a donor, right? I got myself on that list. High risk kidneys. I wanted to do anything that I could to get a transplant as fast as possible, so that way I could cut down on my time. Now, there's a reasoning that I decided to do it this way. One, I was getting older, and I knew that the older I got, the harder transplant was going to be on my body. The recovery time would take longer, right? And the longer I was on dialysis, I figured that the less likelihood I would be a good candidate, because dialysis is not designed for long-term use. I've said this before, and it just wears you down over time. And I wanted to be as young and as strong as possible as I possibly could for the situation I was in at the time, to be able to withstand the surgery. And it was rough. And the recovery time, it was painful. And I couldn't imagine if I was, 45, 50 trying to do this. It would be significantly more challenging. And then for some transplant centers, they have cutoff dates. Like at a certain age, they start really considering whether or not you have a high survivability rate of a transplant. Once you get into your 60s, mid 60s, 70s, if you are healthy and you've shown to them that you have an aptitude for following instructions, taking your binders, taking your medication, doing your treatments, not skipping, showing up for dialysis when you need to, that's in center and at home, and you keep yourself in really good shape, they'll consider it. But if you're kind of so-so and you're creeping up in age, they might just deny you outright. Hey, listen, this guy might not survive this surgery, so we're not going to do it. And that's sort of the reality of it, and I had to make that compromise. I also wanted a living kidney donor, but so eventually I just stopped asking, and I figured my best chance, instead of facing that rejection of people saying no, or those broken promises of people saying they're going to help me and then they don't, or having to deal with scammers trying to get money out of me to get kidneys and stuff like that. I hedged my bets on transplant. The transplant center giving me a kidney. Now, that was a big gamble because of things that I know now. But, 4.5 years later, I got the kidney. Now, any increment of time on dialysis is a long time, right? If you're on dialysis for a year and a half, that's too long. A year, that's too long. 2 years, 3 years. People try to put values on these dates of time. That's still 4.5 years I'll never get back in my life, right? On top of, being sick since 2018 with a prior illness that completely took me out, which led to the kidney disease in the first place. So that's 8 years of time that I just lost. And I just didn't want to wait any longer. I was ready. I was ready for the transplant. I was telling anybody that would listen, I was ready for the transplant. So, when it was time, I was like, okay, whatever happens, I'm doing this. If I die on this table, I'm still going to go through with the transplant. I got to try. Even if the chances were slim, I had to take the chance. I couldn't be a dialysis patient anymore. And with this transplant that I got, I was like, okay, it's not ideal, but I can make this work. Even a deceased kidney donor, even a deceased kidney that you get, can still last you for a long time if you take good care of it. That if you keep your blood pressure in check, if you're a diabetic, you keep your blood sugar in check. If you're taking your anti-rejections, if you're doing all that stuff, you're doing everything right. You're getting an exercise routine. It doesn't have to be like going to the gym for 6 hours, but if you just get into a little walking routine, whatever, you can keep a deceased kidney donor for a long time. It's not like an open and shut case of, oh, well, deceased kidneys are trash. They'll fail within 2 weeks of you getting it. So living transplant is the only option that you got. That's not true. Any one of these transplant doctors will tell you that even if you get a living donor, if you don't take care of the transplant, then it's not going to last. Anybody will tell you that. So as much as it's up to the transplant center to make sure that kidney is right for you and it's viable for transplant, it's also 50% responsible with the patient, right? Again, patients have to do their due diligence. You cannot be a passive observer in your own care. You have to be active. You have to make those decisions, to make the right decisions, to make sure that you keep the kidney or you stay healthy on dialysis to facilitate getting the kidney.